Governor of Colorado, Hickenlooper, it's an honor to be here with you, sir, and thank you very much for taking the time to join us for this event. It's such a great night tonight to see so many very familiar faces, and I see a lot of new faces with us as well. Thanks for being here. Most of you know that the reason I'm running is because I want to make sure that my 3 little boys have the same opportunities that I had when I was being raised here in New Hampshire years ago. But I think that that's under threat, as Larry was saying. Most of you know that winning this seat will allow us to collectively raise our voices in support of our public schools, which are under attack, to grow our 21st century economy, to stand together against this seemingly incessant opioid crisis, and to make sure that every single person in the state of New Hampshire can go and see a doctor if they need to. Those are the reasons why we're all doing this tonight. I'm sorry. About a year ago, my father struggled. Almost overnight, we found out he was diagnosed with pancreatic cancer, and our family was hit. This hit us like a ton of bricks, as you would imagine. But there was one thing that we absolutely never had to ask ourselves, and that was, are we going to be able to get my father the care that he needs and still keep a roof over his head and food on his table? Far too many families in New Hampshire, they have to worry about those types of decisions, and that's unacceptable to me. That's another big part of the reason why I want to go to Concord to represent us all. So when we win here in District 23, that's going to determine who has the majority in the state Senate next year. Another piece of critical information, though, that I really am excited to share with you tonight is we were identified, this district, our campaign, we were identified as one of the 17 districts nationwide at the state level that are critical to win. Out of the thousands of state level races, we're one of the 17 here. So that means that every single time you knock on a door, every phone call that you make, it has that much more of an impact on the next 2 years here in the state of New Hampshire, but also across the nation. So again, thank you all very much for taking the time to be with us. I know we're all very excited to hear from Governor Hickenlooper, but I've been told to turn it over to the chairman of the New Hampshire my friend and next door, Chairman Raymond Buckley.
You're just going to stand in there.
Try it again, Ryan.
The baby will cry until you cheer loud enough. Want to introduce the first gentleman of the 1st District, Gene Porter, over here. And I guess Jeff would be considered the second husband, since he's Vice Chair Senator Martha Fuller Clark's husband. Jeff Clark is here. We've got a bunch of candidates for the House. Everyone raise their hand if you're running. Excellent. Y'all do win. And John, are you the only state Senate candidate here? Oh, sorry. Yeah, but he's not running for state.
No.
Yes.
I just barely.
Yes, and we have a candidate for governor and a candidate for Congress with Mark and with Steve. We give them a big round of applause. This election is exciting because it is coming off from the foundation of what we've been able to do for the past year and a half. Since the horrific night in November of 2016, there have been 11 special elections, and New Hampshire Democrats have won 9 of them, picking up 5 and typically the first in the nation. We were the first state to actually flip a Republican seat to Democrat in the entire country. We won our first state Senate special election since 1984 last summer. And we defeated Ted Gatzis in Manchester with a and we wiped out essentially every Republican in Nashua, and all across the towns and in the cities, in both the town elections and the city elections, we picked up hundreds and hundreds, about 700 Democrats won all of those local offices. Folks, it was very simple. We went out and talked to people. We didn't talk about Donald Trump. We didn't even talk about Chris Sununu, as much as I'd love to. What we talked about is what our vision is and what our candidate's vision was. And we can win with that message. It's about going out there and talking to those voters. Some of the groups that we targeted were the people that voted in 2016 but didn't vote in 2014. There are 80,000 Democrats. So now, those are the last people you would talk to in a special election or a municipal election where turnout is usually like 10%, 15%. You would never, 10 years ago, if somebody said, we're going to talk to the people that only vote in presidential campaigns and try to get them to vote in a special election or a municipal election, and people are like, you are wasting your time, they're never going to show up and vote. They showed up. And so what it told us is that the Democratic base, the voters in New Hampshire, the Democratic voters in New Hampshire, are eager to express that they want this country and this state turned in a much more progressive manner. Now, in 2014, if only half in Rockingham County, if only half of the Democrats that sat home had voted, Carol Shea Porter would have been reelected. Just half of the Democrats who sat home in Rockingham County. So that means not a single other additional Democrat in the Manchester area or in Stratford County or Carroll County or those Merrimack towns, Belknap County, not one more. Just half of Rockingham County, she would have been reelected. Folks, we can win this congressional seat. We can defeat Chris Sununu. We can win the majority in the state Senate. But the ingredient is not going to be TV ads. It's not going to be flashy mail. It's not even going to be stuff that you read on the internet. It's about you talking to your neighbor. We were able to do an analysis of 2014 and 2016, and the number one indicator of getting people to turn out to vote is if somebody from their town knocked on their door. So, I know you don't want to, I know you don't like to, but that's what this is about. 42 staging locations this weekend. We are out there talking to the voters now. It is critically important that we get out there and we talk to our neighbors. It's great that people from another town want to help, but if in your town, you're talking to neighbors, you have instant credibility. In a time with fake news, fake president, fake everything, they want some realness, and the realness is you. And that you can tell your story. You don't need to have a message that's been cooked up in New York or in Washington or even in Concord. Tell them why you're taking the time out of your life to go to that door. Tell them whatever the issue is that's motivating you. Tell them your story. Say that you're going to vote for these candidates and you hope that, that they will consider too. It will happen, folks. We are going to have an amazing election year if we all work together and if we make sure that we get out there and knock on those doors. So who's going to knock on doors this weekend? Who's going to write big fat checks in order to not be able to knock on doors? Shoot. Nobody fell for that one. Okay. Listen, we've got an exciting primary in Congress, and we have an exciting primary for governor, and that's terrific. But the critical thing is that on the day after, that we're all united. And encourage all of you to come. We're going to have a big unity breakfast that we're going to bring everybody together Thursday morning after the primary. We want all of our candidates, whether they were successful or not, to be there. We want supporters because we want to show the voters out there that the Democrats are united and that we're going to be there together. So thank you for coming to this amazing office. And I get the honor of once again introducing, what?
There's a blue Lexus that's gonna get towed any minute. Just wanted to save someone from that board.
A blue Lexus.
I think it might be
A
black.
blue Lexus.
Yeah, it looks black. Blue or black. We got the owner. We're good.
And I'm glad you did that because it reminded me that I was supposed to introduce the staff. I was like, that's what she's telling me to do. And I was like, oh no. Our regional director, Maria Dieters. Maria. Our organizer, Julia Derby. Avery Tardeo. And our fellow Colin McDonald. And our coordinating campaign director, Aaron Chermel. And our field director, organizing director, Emma Tyler. And our communications deputy director, Sarah Guggenheimer. And our community reality check organizer, say that 10 times fast, Ethan Quinn. And our deputy operations director, Ethan Morehouse, in the back. So, I have made lots of friends around the country, and there seems to be this luck of Colorado of having phenomenal state party chairs. And so I always look forward to hearing either from former Colorado chairs or current ones, because it's always something amazing, because they do such fantastic stuff in state government and politically as well.
Create my own business. I opened the first brew pub in the Rocky Mountains. A restaurant that brews its own beer. That itself is a claim to fame. But running that small business, you know, in the first week we were open, I knew I'd be a better operator of that brew pub than I would have ever been a geologist. And that opportunity to kind of control my own fate and get involved in the community was something that I never planned on, I never prepared for, and yet I became kind of immersed in the community. And the one thing is, you know, those first 5 or 6 years I just worked. I worked 70 hours, 80 hours a week like a lot of small business people. But I got involved in nonprofits everywhere because A, to be honest, it was good for business to get people to come and have that first meeting in your restaurant. But as I, you know, our business began doing a little better, and all of a sudden, about 1995, 1996, it took off. And you got to work hard your whole life, but it doesn't hurt to have, at that time, the most popular baseball stadium open a block from your, from your front door. So when Coors Field opened in '95, we kind of took off, and all my customers, I was the one that tried to convince them. They treated every city council member was a bum, every mayor was a bum, every congressional person was a bum, and I was the one that said, no, this is America. They are us. If you don't like it, we should vote them out, and you guys should run against them. And somehow in 2003, they turned that against me. and I never ran for student council, and I ran for mayor of Denver, and really didn't know what I was getting into, but I thought I would try to be positive in the vision of what a city could be, try to get the city to work with the suburbs, try to, you know, find common ground on a bunch of places that had been dividing us. And in a weird way, I think that's what almost all Democrats really believe in, right? That we are stronger by working together. We are stronger when we're united. And it worked. I mean, we took Denver from, you know, when I opened my brew pub, the rent was $1 per square foot per year. Right? That's 1988. That's how bad the economy was back then. Larry's nodding his head. That's bad. That's really, really bad. And now, if you go to downtown Denver, the place is alive, and it's because a bunch of us all worked together. And we weren't going to open nightclubs. We were going to try and do housing and create a village, basically a downtown community that would act as a catalyst for the whole region. And it works. And that lesson of working together, that's how I ran for mayor and got elected. And we worked with the suburbs. We created a transit. We got all 34 mayors unanimously to support the largest tax increase in the history of the state to build a transit system, right? Light rail, 122 miles of light rail. Of those 34 mayors, 2/3 were Republicans, and yet they supported it. We spent the time to listen and push back. And you know, New Hampshire is one of the places where that should really work, where you go to your neighbors and you listen. Because people aren't, I'm not saying there aren't a lot of really partisan people here. I'm not saying that. Democrats, Republicans, thank God for the partisan Democrats, right? Our salvation in many ways. But those neighbors that Ray was talking about, and there's no other way to win elections than to go and have those conversations and just talk facts. Don't try and sell. The most successful conversions, getting people to vote for Democrats I've ever had are the ones where I said the least, right? Where I just listened and kept asking questions and let them explain where they were coming from. And you give reasonable people a chance. They'll almost always, not always, but almost always come around. And I'm like Ray. I'm not even going to talk about Trump, right? I got to meet President Macron of France last November. He will not allow the name Trump to be mentioned in his office because he says you'll immediately go to 25 minutes, then it'll be an hour, and you're not really solving anything, and that they've got a lot of work to do, and that's not germane to their work. I think that's what has to happen here as well. The fact that the Republican Party is not in any way trying to restrain a president who has, state-sponsored child abuse at the borders when you separate infants and toddlers from their mothers. This notion that we're, in some way going to improve rural America economies by getting into a trade war. I go down the list. I wasn't going to say anything, was I? The bottom line is that we have to take back Congress and we have to take back our state legislatures. And the state legislature, I think, is every bit as important. And I think what John's doing, I bow down to the family. I know what it's like to have, you don't do this by yourself, right? It's exactly. There's no other way to do it. And I will also tell you that having someone in your state legislature who knows something about cybersecurity is invaluable. And when you're out talking to your neighbors, play that up, because it is. I had lunch with President Obama. Last June, before the elections in 2016. He did the commencement speech at Air Force Academy, and I asked him, what wakes you up? What's the thing you're most concerned about? And he didn't hesitate. Cybersecurity. He said it is the single greatest threat, not just to America but to the world. And we're working as hard as we can, but there's just a lot of ground we've got to cover. So having more people experienced in cybersecurity in state legislatures should be a highest priority for all of us. Anyway, let me just finish, because you get me wound up and I'll get too excited. All those years in the restaurant business, right? I think that the opportunity now, and New Hampshire is such a perfect place for it, to be transformative and really take back a bunch of seats in your state house and your state senate and really make a big statement, maybe even take back control of one of those houses, would be unbelievably powerful. And I know some of you are saying, wait, it's been too long, and that's too steep a hill. So when I first ran in 2003, and I didn't run for city council, I ran for mayor of Denver. And mayor of Denver is the strongest mayor form of government in America. So there's no town manager, no city manager. The mayor hires everybody, makes the budget. There are 13 city council members, and they need 9 out of 13 votes to overrule one line item of the mayor's budget. It's a great system. Did that sound wrong? So I go out there and I start running because I think, a restaurant person, small business person, talking about jobs on a granular way, face to face with people, and nothing happened. I got into the election a little late. It was going to be 4.5 months. 2 months in, I was still at about 4 or 5%. There were 4 other really talented people with real experience, and they were all 12% to 16 to 18%. And I used to carry around, I always use this story when people think the hill's too steep. And I would try to fire up my young campaign volunteers with this kind of tattered clipping from the Denver Post about a professor of public speaking at the University of Wyoming. And she'd been talking to her class about the importance of using opposites when you're trying to create emotional impact. You're going to talk about the worst of times, talk about the best of times. You're going to talk about the agony, talk about the ecstasy. The words gain emotional impact. And she asked her class, what's the opposite of despair? Kid raised her hand, goes, joy? She goes, exactly! You want to really have people feel despair, use joy in the same sentence. The words gain impact by being close together. And then she said, what's the opposite of whoa? And a kid way in the back goes, giddy up! And And the point is that not all, in almost every serious challenge, the opposite of woe is to giddy up, right? And I think right now we face a national challenge that for all of us, it should, before we go to bed, we should just spend, I'm trying to do this myself, every night trying to say, all right, what's 10 minutes or 20 minutes of something I hadn't thought about that I could do tomorrow that will have some impact? Who's someone I haven't talked to? Just that small incremental bit, if we all do that, then we do win. And it's, you know, that little bit can be all the giddy up we need sometimes. Anyway, thanks for being here, thanks for working. Let's make sure Jon gets elected, and let's make sure we give him a lot of other Democrats in the House and in the Senate as well. But I think as the governor of the entire state of Colorado, I get to say thank you, Julia, for having organized this whole thing.
Thank you for that introduction, Governor Hickenlooper. My name is Julia Derby. I'm the field organizer here in Exeter with the coordinated campaign. I want to thank all of you so much for being here tonight. It's so great to see so much energy in the room and so many people who are really fired up about electing Democrats this year. So thank you all so much for being here. And as I'm sure all of you know, in New Hampshire, elections are won and lost every year by field margins. So that's why the work that we're going to be doing out of this office is so very important. I know I wouldn't be here personally if I didn't feel that this upcoming midterm election was the most important of all of our lifetimes, especially as someone who studied environmental science. I'm extremely worried about the possibility of us not winning. There could be really dire consequences for the environment, especially here in the seacoast. So that's what keeps me fired up and gets me motivated to do this kind of work every day. As I'm sure all of you know, there are a million other reasons to support Democrats this year, and I'd love to talk to all of you about all of them. So as Larry mentioned, we have just about 100 days between now and Election Day. And that may seem like a while, but if you think about all of the doors we have to knock and all the people we have to talk to before that date, that's really not that much time. So I'm counting on everyone in this room to sign up for a volunteer shift. There are people all around with clipboards. If you've already signed up, please go and sign up for another one. That would be really awesome, and we really need all of your help. So thank you all so much for being here today, and I look forward to working with all of you and celebrating together when we win on November 6th. So thank you.